and welcome to Mandy's Makings. Today I'm going to do some even count peyote so you can learn how to do it. It's another how-to beginner tutorial. Hopefully we'll have the odd count out really soon. Now I have shown a how-to video on the very basics if you have trouble starting your first row where I use a needle, so please check the little box up the top and go check that out if you're really struggling to start peyote. Now, I start my peyote without a stopper bead, but feel free to use a stopper bead. And what a stopper bead is just another bead. Let me just pull one out here of a different color. So I'm just going to pull a silver one out here. So a stopper bead, what you do is you just take it and you put it on your needle, and then you bring it down to the end of your thread, and then you bring your needle back through the bead. So this is my tail. This is the thread going to my needle, and I'm just going to bring it back through. And if you bring it back through once, depending on how big the bead is, you can still slide it along the thread. See how it sort of moves along the thread? I'll show you when it's down. Oh, maybe I'll do it here so you can see this much, and I can move it. See, it's a little farther from my fingers. So yeah, it moves so you can cinch up. But I find they often move too much. So then if you want to keep it from moving even more, you can go through it a second time from the bottom to the top again. And when you do that, you get two threads on the outside, and you can move it, but it takes a little bit more effort to move it. So you have to pull a lot harder on the bead to be able to get it to move. Okay, so you can choose to use a stopper bead. I don't choose to use a stopper bead, but that's just my way. So I will show you with the stopper bead, and then I will probably explain to you how I would do it without the stopper bead. So we're just going to do an even count. Even count, what that means is there's an even number of beads in sort of the pattern. So now this is probably going to make my screen go crazy, but this is even count. And if you look, so this is like a candy cane stripe. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 red beads wide. Now that's on an angle, but peyote is difficult to explain. I'm just going to do it this way. There's 6 beads wide total. So that's even count. If it was 7 beads, it would be odd count. Okay? So depending on how many beads wide you want to make something, and this is just a little ring. It's a little candy cane ring. Just fun. And it's a great place to start learning how it works. And these also fit over top of your, I can't think of the name of them right now. Those glass beads that everybody is into, so you can, slide them over top of your glass bead and turn them into pretty patterns. Okay, so they're called carrier beads. So this is what they look like. I just got one out so you could see it. So this is a little carrier bead, and you usually put a little strip of peyote, and you can use even count or odd count. If you want to see some really good things, Kelly Dale's Off the Beaten Path shows you all kinds of patterns, and she has a free pattern download from her store as well of different patterns for carrier beads, and I'll put a link below under the show more button for her patterns and her store. And if you're in the United States, it's really good prices, and you can get the beads as well as the strips. So this is too big, it's obviously for a finger, but the idea is the strip goes over top of the carrier bead like this and sort of covers the carrier bead, and these are Delicas. Okay, so I'm using Delicas today to show you because they sit the nicest, and if you understand what Delicas, you can do it with any if you understand sort of what it should look like. So my suggestion to you is to go buy yourself your 2 favorite colors or 3 favorite colors of Delicas, because they are a little bit more expensive. Just buy a couple, like 3 tubes, so it gives you some variation on possible colors, and practice. Make some rings, give them to your friends, you make them bigger and turn them into napkin rings. I mean, if you make them wider, you can do whatever you'd like. So have some fun with this, okay? So this is how you do even count peyote. So you need to have an even count. So I have 6 beads on my needle, 2 black, 2 white, and 2 black. And I'm using an 8-pound Fireline at the moment because I'm using black beads, and I do have Wildfire as well, and from Potomac Bead Company, Bead Along, and that works just fine too. The only thing is it only comes in white and sort of green, which will blend in with lots of colors. So you can choose to use whatever. I'm using a synthetic because this is actually a fishing line. Wildfire was created for fly fishing, for fishing, and it holds up to a heavier fish for a finer wire instead of using monofilament. So that's why it's good and strong, and it'll hold up really well, especially for a ring. And I want something to hold up really, really well for a ring. The other one is Nosu Sunoku. Thread is stretchy. So if you're wanting your ring, make it a little tiny bit smaller than you want it to be, and it'll stretch out a little bit. And with the thread, just a smidge, maybe 1 row shorter. Okay, so you have the beads on here. Now when I'm doing it without the stopper bead, all I do is putting the beads back down here, if they'll be nice, and I just take my finger and I'm holding on to the tail thread here it sort of just wraps around this finger. And if I'm really wanting to tension it, I can take it and stick it between these 2 bottom fingers here. And that is how I start my peyote, unless I have a strip that's like this long. So for small projects like this is how I would start it. I wouldn't bother putting a stopper bead on. But for those of you who are new, put the stopper bead on. And again, I'm going to hold it the same way. I'm just pushing it up against the stopper bead. I've got the thread tucked in my hand, so it's coming around this finger and through these 2 fingers so that it has somewhere to rest against, and this keeps it sort of tight on my finger. Okay, so you can do stripes, you can do zigzags with this pattern. You can do lots of things, but you don't have a center point. The center point would be right here. If you had an odd count, you'd have a center point to do arrows or chevrons. So you can't do a chevron. The chevron would be off-sided by 1 bead or the other. So your patterns have to be stuff that doesn't have to have a center point. So any pattern you design or you come up with or you see that has a definite center in it, where you can see like an arrow or a shape or something coming down the center, even a little diamond with other colors around it, you'll see that often in patterns. That's odd count. So that doesn't work for even count, okay? Your pattern will not work out. You have to use an even count of beads, okay? So how peyote works is you pick up a bead, you skip a bead, which is this one here, and you go through the next bead. So you go through the next bead, okay? And I pull it, and I'm still holding it in my hand. And now at this point, I put my thumb over here, and I stick my other thumb over those 3 beads, and I pull up. And I'm pulling straight up because that's the way I want the thread to go. And what you end up with is this. You have 2 beads and then another bead. See how it looks like a little sort of top hat with the 2 black beads and then a single black bead? That's what you want. Okay, so now I can hold on to that little bottom piece, and you can see my threads coming out between the white and black bead here. So now I'm going to pick up a white bead, and I'm going to skip this white bead and go through the next white bead. And I'm going to pull, there we go, straight up. Don't pull out to the side because you'll make it go wonky. And then the next one, this is the bead that I'm skipping. I'm going to do stripes. So pick up a bead, skip the next bead. And don't go through your stopper bead, just go through the other bead by itself. Okay. So I just pull out everything nice and tight, snug up everything. So let's just make this bottom prettier. Now, if things don't sit right, I don't know if you can see this, you can take them and get them to sit right. Come on, get in the middle. So those two aren't wanting to sit in the middle nice and flat. There we go. So you want them to look like three little top hats stacked on top of each other. Okay. And if it doesn't look like that, something's wrong. So then take your stopper bead off, take your beads off, and try again. It's only thread. And if it's really knotted or really messed up, then just cut your thread and start again. Okay. Tension is critical when you're doing peyote. You have to keep a decent tension. And with these little Miyuki Delicas, they're cylinders, so they look like they've been a tube that's been like a pipe in your house that's been chopped into little tiny pieces. So it's not rounded in. It doesn't round in on the edge towards the hole. It just cut off and cut off straight. So they sort of look like a straight tube with a big hole. It does give you more room for your thread and your needle, which is great for beginners. And they stack nicely because there's no rounded edge. So that makes it easier for beginners. Now, I'm a flipper, but I'm going to show you without flipping, and then I'm going to show you with flipping. So without flipping, I'm going to hold gingerly those beads between my fingers. Let's see if I can come in a little tighter for you. Okay. I have this between my fingers, and you can see the three little top hats. A black little hat with its brim, the white little hat, and the... Okay, so now I'm ready to come back down. So I'm going to hold this between my fingers so that I can see. People refer to these beads here as the sticky outies. Okay, so this bead, and this bead are sticking out higher than the beads in between. Okay, so I'm going to refer to them as sticky outies. That's what most people in the industry call them, just so you know, so you're not alone. You're going to hear this a lot. So I'm going to pick up a black bead, and I've got the black bead on my needle, and I'm just going to come through the first sticky outie. And I'm going to come back in. And I'm going to pull straight down this time. And then I'm going to pick up a white bead, and I'm going to come through the next sticky outie. And I'm going to pull. And then I'm going to pick up a black bead, and I'm going to go through the last sticky outie at the bottom, and I'm going to pull. And you know, you don't have to tighten really tight in between. I'm just giving a little good tug there so they sit all nice and flat and straight. See how lovely that is? Now you can go back up. I'm going to hold again onto my beads. I'm not squishing the heck out of them. I'm just holding onto them between my fingers. I still have my tail still between my other fingers here, so there's tension. It's not going to slip around. And if it's slipping around, just grab a hold of your thread and put it between your fingers, and so that you sort of have a counterpoint. Okay. These are all little hints that'll help you to be successful with peyote. And then I'm going to pick up another black bead, and I'm going to go through the sticky outie. So this becomes a sticky outie thing. You only go through the sticky outies. I need a white bead, so just give me a second here. So I have a white bead, and going through the sticky outie, and then a black bead, and going through the sticky outie. Okay, so at this point, you have a pretty solid piece of work. It's not really going to fall apart at this point. You can, even grab a hold of it on either end. You have a pretty good solid piece of work that you could just continue and continue and continue and continue. Okay, so let me just do it with when I flip. So I'm at the top here, and if I want to flip, what I do is I just flip that way. So my tail thread's up at the top right now, and I'm just going to flip it up. It makes no difference. It just means that I can always work my thread the same direction. And for some people, that works better for them. So don't freak out if something doesn't work for you and something else works for you. Just find your way. As long as you get the same end results, it doesn't matter. So there's black bead, a white bead, and a black bead. So I'm picking up the same color that I'm skipping over, and that's how I'm getting my stripes. As far as like long stripes, they're going to run all the way along the piece. Okay. Now, a little bit of knowledge about peyote. I'm going to call them two different things so they don't confuse you. This direction is called a row. This direction is called a column. Okay, so you have one row here that has 1, 2, 3 beads in it, and then if you come up a half step, you get another row with 1, 2, 3 beads in it. Those first 2 rows are what I put on my needle at the very beginning. And then the third row is this one here with a black, white, black. Okay. Now, it gets really hard to count it that way. And a lot of people count rows on the diagonal. So I have 6 rows on here. And so if I take my needle and I put it on the diagonal, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if I count that black bead there, but then I'm missing what would be the 6th bead. So that's how people often count it. Or you can count the 2 opposite ends. So this is 3 and 3 is 6. Or you can count the first 2 rows in a pattern that you're working on, and you get the same results, 6. So that's what most people do, is they either count both sides or they count the first 2 rows together, and that's your 6 rows. So 6 rows. Now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns wide. Okay, and 6 columns wide is the same width as this here. See, 6 columns wide. So that is, well, and you can play with that again. So let me just grab a little tiny measuring tape. This is my small measuring tape, and I know a lot of you guys like it in inches, so I'm going to try to do this in inches. So it's, so that's what, 3/8, or a third, no, whatever, that's half, a quarter of an inch, yeah, 3/8. So it's 3/8 of an inch, or for people who like centimeters, it's 1 centimeter wide. Okay, so just gives you an idea. So that's not very wide. If you get your rulers out, check it out. So I am going to continue doing this for a few rows, and then I will show you how to zip something up in the round. Okay, so I'll be back when I get that done. Okay, so I just done a little sample piece, and because I just want to show you how this works, and this is big enough for me to fold it in half. This is also how you make toggles, just so you know, not this length, but wider and less rows. Yeah, less rows, and then you zip it up, and it turns it into a toggle. And it's in one of my other videos, so you again check the little arrow up above, and you can see that. So I have this little strip, and I don't know if you noticed, but I have my tail here, and I'm going to actually take that bead off, and I have my other one up here. And the reason I'm doing that is because I have to have okay, I need to have an out on one side and an in on the other side of the same column. See how this is in and this is out. This is out and this is out and this is in. So that when I fold it in half, I have a matchup of outies and innies. So let's see if I can show you this. So this one sticks out and this one's in. This one's in and this one's out. This one's out and this one's in. So I always just remember to have my tail and my finishing thread on the opposite ends. And as long as they're at the opposite sides, one's on the bottom, one's on the top, I'm going to have a good match. Okay, so this is how you zip it up. So I'm going to try to show here. I'm going to come to the opposite side, so this is the top side here. and I'm going to come through that first bead on that side. Okay. Now, because the tail isn't secured, I'm just going to hold on to it for a second, and I'm going to pull. And then I'm going to go to the one on the right side, and I'm going to put it down the sticky outie on the right side, just the one bead, and I'm going to pull. And then I'm going to go to the sticky outie on the left side, and I'm going to pull. And I'm going to do the sticky outie on the right side, and I'm going to pull. And on the left side, and on the right side. Now you're going to, then your tail and your needle thread are going to be on the same side. I don't know if you notice this, but I can actually stick my needle still between these two beads. See how I'm sticking my needle? There's no thread there. There needs to be a thread there. If you look on the other side, I can't stick my needle between because there's threads that run from one bead to the next bead. They run across the top of the bead, so I can't get my needle between from the top side. I can do it this way. I can stick it in, but I can't do it that way. So we have to seal that off. So if you have a big gap, that tells you that you're not done yet. So I got to go back down this side here. Okay. So I'm going to go back up the one bead here. And that puts on that final thread that I need. And in this case, I'm actually going to come back up the thread that's on the bottom again. The one I just went through prior. I'm going to make sure I don't get caught on that one there. There we go. So my two threads are beside each other on the outside again. And I am going to tie my two threads together. So you just make it a normal left over right, right over left knot, like you're for anything else that you would knot in your life. And now I have a knot on the outside. Now, because this is a sort of a nylon-y kind of product, it's a bonded plastic, it can melt. And a lot of people will cut this off and melt the last little piece. What I like to do is pull the knot back inside. So I'm going to go back up that first one again, the one that had the tail thread coming out of it originally. And I'm going to bring this across and I'm going to pull, and I'm going to pull straight up. And what that does is it takes that knot and sucks it up into that bead. Now I'm going to come up the next one here. So I'm just working my way up. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm just working my thread away from, so I'm just coming up one bead at a time. With the Delicas, it's much harder to go up more than one bead. If you go on if you get a really good slant, sometimes you can get up a couple of beads. There's two beads at once. Sometimes more if your tension's really good and tight. You're not going to be able to get up a lot of beads, and you didn't do anything wrong. You actually did everything right. Okay, so I tend to go up one direction, and then I come back down. So my thread's coming out of right here. See if I can get the shine on the beads to help me. Thread on the right here, and I'm going to go into the bead right beside it and back down again. Now I know that I came up this bead to go here the first time, so I'm going to come back down the same bead. So essentially what I'm doing is creating like a little figure 8. So I started here, I came up, and I'm coming back around. And I'm done. And what that does is guarantee that my thread's secure. You can go back up one more time if you want. Some people swear by 3 times, some 2. But this made me a little tube. Now, if it was bigger, it would make a perfect ring, as in this case. And you can't see where I started or where I began. It's all the same, all the way across. There's no like weird seam or a weird thing going on. I got a little bit of thread showing right here, which I shouldn't have right there. But that's like, you guys are looking at like what would be 100 times magnification. Nobody looks at it that close. So this actually would make a cute little bead if you strung it on some wire, or you use it as a cap between two beads, with one of those eye pins, or so these can be something small like this. So as you're practicing and you're trying out different colorways and trying out different patterns, these would make great little fun beads that you could use. They could be put together through a piece of leather cording on your wrist as a bead on a bracelet. So I don't throw these things out. I have a little jar full of these like little bits and pieces that I work on, because you never know, and all of a sudden I'll go, oh, I can make one more of those. Okay, so at this point I just cut my thread, and these scissors for me work. A lot of people burn off their thread. I cut this kind of thread under tension, so I tend to do one piece at a time. Let's see if I can get it to behave here. Okay, so I'm just taking my against my thing and I cut it, and when I do that, that frees up my thread. That used very little thread. To do a full ring size, 7, 8, 9 ring size, takes about half a wingspan, so an arm span from the middle of my chest out to my fingertips on one side, and that's usually what it takes to do one full one of these. When you've done this with this kind of beads, you can do it with other kinds of beads, and this is just a little sampler. This is a red and white sampler. Again, this is an even count, and because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 columns. So this is just wider, and as you can see, this would make a really wide ring, or it could make a tube in the center. Now, there's some properties about peyote that you need to know. The direction the beads are going, so the whole tops are here, right? Your holes on your beads are this way, up and down this way. The direction the holes are it has very little flexibility. See? It doesn't want to go anywhere. And that's why people use other stitches, because you have different flexibility depending on which stitches you use. But you have a ton of flexibility this way. Like tons. I can fold it over on itself and over on itself again, like a big cannoli. Okay? So it's super easy to flex it to be able to do what you need to do to make it move. Now these would be a fun earring, wouldn't they? With a little bicone, a red bicone on the top and the bottom. You'd have like this little candy cane barber pole earring. Super cool. Okay, so this is Even Count Peyote, and look forward to my Odd Count Peyote, and then I'm going to have some tutorials with all of the above that I'm going to show you, and hopefully you will enjoy them. I want to teach you the basic tricks of the trade, and then you can go from there. Take care, and see you later from Annie's Makings. Bye. Keep on making.